Okay, cool.
All right, everybody, we want to welcome you tonight to Heart with Dan and Angela.
Hi there.
And we got a great guest for you tonight. He's an ex-Jehovah's Witness, and he's from Southeast Australia, like
Victoria
area. Yeah. And we're really excited to have him on. He's got a really neat perspective, something he wants to share with us tonight. I think it's different than what I've seen on most of the YouTube videos and things. So anyway, welcome to the show,
Yes,
Costa.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Yeah, and I guess I like to start out the show. We'd like to start it out with, how did you get involved with the Witnesses? When did all this start? When you got into this?
When I was 3 years old, my mother had gotten ill, and she'd had 3 operations in 6 months. Back before keyhole surgery. So even having your gallbladder out was, a 10-day to 2-week stay in the hospital. So she was home while Dad went to work, and she had me to look after. And some Jehovah's Witnesses knocked on the door. And she was in a vulnerable situation there where she needed support and comfort. Now, before I should start at the beginning, we're actually Italian immigrants.
Wow.
So unlike in the US, most of the Italians only came to Australia in the 50s and 60s. In the US, most of them, I think, were, 20s and 30s and before then. So we still have strong ties back to Italy in that, my sister was born in Italy, and my brother was born in Europe as well. I was born here in Australia.
Wow.
So my mother didn't speak any English, or very poor English at that time. So they sent someone who could speak Italian, and they offered to study the Bible with her, the bait and switch. And my mother said, well, yeah, sure. I used to ask the priest back home about these things, all these questions, and he never answered them properly. So if you've got answers, I'm interested. And so, she did the truth book. Within 6 months, she was baptized. I was 3.5 when that happened. And I grew up in the Jehovah's Witnesses, and believing everything I was told, and feeling very grateful that I was in the chosen religion, and I had the truth and everyone else was wrong. And,
did you love it? Did you love it when you were in? Like, really love it? The brothers?
No, there was something about it that always struck me as it didn't feel right.
Wow.
Mentally, I was completely convinced because of all the indoctrination and, the 5 hours a week of meetings back then. But it did not feel right. I was always looking for that relationship with God, and Jehovah's Witnesses just don't have that. They have the relationship with the Watchtower Society and the rules and laws that their men put them through, but they have no real relationship with God.
I got a question for you, Costa. How young were you when you were like saying there's something wrong here? I got it here.
Yeah.
I got it in my head. It makes sense according to the Bible and what they're telling me, but something in your heart said something was wrong. How old were you?
This will blow you away. I was 3 and something years old when Mum decided to burn the pictures of Jesus that we had hanging up, because we were Catholics, being Italians. And so she lit a fire in the backyard.
Oh my God.
And was burning these pictures because they were, they were evil idols. I actually tried to jump in. I tried to grab the picture of Jesus out of the fire.
Oh, wow.
And she stopped me. I knew there was something about this that was not right.
Wow.
I was only 3 years old. It blows me away that I had a sense of holy and
some truth. You had a sense of connectivity to Christ, and that's pretty amazing. I mean,
okay, so you guys, for my information, because I was raised Worldwide Church of God, which is half Jehovah's Witness, half Jewish. Okay.
Yeah.
And very much like Jehovah's Witnesses in most ways. But I just wanted to ask you though, oh shoot, now I just forgot what I was going to say. That's
Were
terrible.
you going to ask what the significance was of burning the
Oh,
pictures?
yes, because if you guys believe that Jesus died for your sins, so this is from my knowledge, if you believe that Jesus died for your sins, then why would it be necessary to burn his picture? Because it's not like you don't think nothing of him. You think
I'll
something
let
of
Costa
him.
answer that.
Yeah, okay.
Well, these were pictures that had a backlight on them, and every good Catholic boy and girl had one over their bed, and you could plug it in at night, and it was a night light, and it would
Oh,
shine through. And but they were Catholic pictures, not Jehovah's Witness pictures, and anything that's not Jehovah's Witness. So you can have a picture of Jesus on your calendar, on your jw.org calendar, but you can't have it, if it's not approved by the Watchtower Society in a way. So anything else is considered idols and idolatry, or it would be considered an icon. So she got rid of the Christmas tree. That never bothered me. It was when she was burning these pictures that I really I felt something was wrong. So in going to the meetings, I was never really happy with them until I was about 13, and that's when I think the indoctrination really kicked in, and I thought, well, this is it. This is the truth. And when I was 13, I did what they told us to do, and I dedicated my life to Jehovah. And something happened that night. I prayed, and I felt God's presence. I felt God's love that night when I prayed and said that to him. But it lasted a while, and then I just went through all the motions from the time I was 13 onwards. I left school early. I became a pioneer, because in the late 80s they were really pushing, the pioneering, and the end of the generation that will not pass and all that.
That's the one I was in.
yeah. And
Yeah.
what age did you become a pioneer?
I was 16,
Wow.
and so I only did. Well, we have 12 years like you do. I only did year 10, so I don't know what you'd call that. And I left early, and it was good because we're in an economic boom. I could get work and drop work whenever I wanted to. It was easy. So I pioneered, for a few years, 2 years, and I hated every minute of it. It never felt right to me.
Was it full time?
Right.
Was it full time
Yeah.
pioneer? Oh wow, 2
Yeah,
years.
90 hours a month. Yeah.
Whoa.
So yeah, it's 70 hours now, but it used to be 90 back then. Yeah.
Wow.
I worked 3 days a week at a brickyard, stacking bricks, and
Wow.
like the Jews, like the Israelites in Egypt, making bricks. And then I'd spend 3 days a week door knocking for my other slave master.
Oh man.
And that was because they were pushing Revelation book, this generation,
Yes.
I know, including the Great Tribulation.
I remember selling a few of those. Yeah.
Yeah, well, what
So
about
that was my story. I became depressed. Then we had as our treasurer put it, the recession we had to have. And so we went into a recession in the 90s, and I couldn't get work, and I was depressed. We're very blessed in Australia. We have very generous social welfare. So, I was never, really starving or without money, but it's not a nice place to be when you're unemployed. And that led to depression. I stopped pioneering. And eventually, when I was 25, I decided this is mad. I've got a good brain. I've got to do something with my life. So I went to university, and I studied viticulture. That's grape growing, wine growing, we call it. And a couple of years later, after that, my brother was disfellowshipped, and the way they did it was just terrible. And I agreed, he wasn't living a Christian life, so they had the right to sanction him in some way. But he almost died during the. He went into a catatonic trance during one of the judicial meetings. Yeah, twice actually. Twice it happened. And it doesn't take. You can actually die from that.
What is it from shock? Is it from shock and fear and
shock?
stuff?
Yeah. Yeah, fear more than anything.
It was,
Yeah,
what did you call it again? A catatonic
trance.
trance.
Jeez, I
Yeah,
never heard of that.
Dan, you know how they just stare? You've seen it in nursing
Yeah,
homes where
yeah.
people just
yeah.
staring, they don't say
Oh my
anything.
God.
You can talk to
There's
them, they can hear you, right? They can hear you, but they can't talk.
no. I think it's a bit like it's a dream, sort of. They can hear you, but it's very far away, and there's no response. We called the ambulance and the paramedic. They pinch you right there on the quick, very hard. I mean, right there, they pinch very hard, and you know how painful that is. No response, and they took him to hospital, and a few hours later he came out of it. But there's actually I recently read a medical paper about it a few months ago that explained what happens. But anyway,
Just talking about that, Costa, the way that they treat people and women. We've heard a lot of women's stories about it, and how that they make you tell every detail over and over in great detail, and they do it into the middle of the night and literally cause great trauma, and it burns in their souls, where they could feel so much shame about that thing that they did, had to tell it over and over in all humiliation. It was really none of their business. How did you do it? And did you kneel down to do it? And what angle were you at? And the whole thing. People think that they were singled out for that sort of abuse, and it turns out that everybody who goes into those meetings, they've been trained to do it that way, to make sure you never do it again, or God only knows what reason. But it's very abusive, and it causes a lot of trauma that people don't really ever recover from it. And
yeah. So seeing all that, and then my mother. Oh, look, there was allegations of sexual abuse of his son, by one of the elders, and it looked like they were trying to get him out of the way so that they could have better access to his young son. My mother got involved because she was worried about her grandson, and she was a pioneer. They took away her privileges of pioneering because she got involved. And I saw all this, and at the time I was living in a share house with an elder and a ministerial servant, and it was great. It was very clean, and we had a roster for cooking. We cooked for each other 2 nights a week, and then Saturday night was, we usually went out Saturday night to do something anyway. So it was a great place to live. But when all this was going on, so I got to the end of my religion, as I call it. And one night I just called out. I said, Jehovah, I've had enough of this man-made stuff. I want you. And again, I got that presence in my room, in my heart. I felt God's love, the same as when I was 13. But this time it was even more overwhelming. And from that moment onwards, everything's changed. I started to look at the Jehovah's Witnesses like I was an outsider, and I was looking in at them rather than being part of it. So I was still going to the meetings and that, but it just didn't. I was saying, this just feels foreign to me.
Jehovah gave you sight.
Yeah.
You got sight. You were now outside looking at all. You're going, wow, I'm outside of this thing, and you could see everything as it was. He gave you vision.
Well, that's cool, because I've just been learning about how that you want to do this in your everyday life, but God actually caused it to be that you had the experience. But I want to practice coming out of who I think I am, like I'm an observer, and seeing, these thoughts that I think I am, who I am, and what I believe, and what I fear, and what I'm anxious about is really not anything at all. And it's not who I am, and trying to realize that God actually gave you that experience. So you're on the outside looking down in. How fascinating is it?
So would you say now, Costa, that you have a relationship with Jehovah, but outside the organization?
Or what?
Absolutely.
Yay.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
This is what I want to tell you all about, is my search for relationship with God. And so as I said, everything changed from that day onwards. I gave myself permission to question the truth and listen to the answers. That's the difference, I think. Many times I think Jehovah's Witnesses will have come to this place where they think there's just something wrong about all this. But then the indoctrination kicks in, and they just keep pushing it to the back of their mind. No, don't listen to that. That's Satan talking to you. I gave myself permission to listen to the answers, and 6 months later, I was pretty much out. And even though I went door knocking for during that 6 months, I was more interested in what people had to say rather than what I had to say. Which is very unlike Jehovah's Witnesses. And I spoke to a couple El Salvadorian seminary students one day. I knocked on their door, and we had this great discussion about the Trinity. And they said, you're different to other Jehovah's Witnesses. And I'm thinking in my head, it's because I'm not.
That's awesome. I never heard a story like that where you were kind of going out as a witness, but you were out there listening and learning.
Yeah, you know what else? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was more interested in their experience. That's what I wanted to hear about. What do you think about God?
That's interesting. You know what I love too? I just was studying this today because I'm going to be doing a class on this about denial, about being in denial mode, and how that denial that we get into, it creates like a cognitive dissonance in our brain. So what we're seeing, we deny that we're seeing it. And we say it's something else because we don't want to be shunned, because we don't want our parents to not love us anymore, because we don't want to get cut out of the family will, or we don't want to be, interrogated by the elders, or whatever it is, that we deny what we're seeing, deny what we're experiencing, and deny how we feel about something. And even if something really bad is going on, like someone's being abused, an elder abusing somebody, and we deny that it's been going on because we don't want to be kicked out, we don't want to get in trouble, and so we just literally deny that it even happened. We play these horrible games with ourselves, and we get split. And this is not just in Jehovah's Witnesses, it's everywhere. It's in government, it's in other churches, other cults. And it's a real problem because, once you kind of get in that mindset, they say you learn that way of denial from a child. So you're sort of in the patterning of when something doesn't fit in what it's supposed to look like, you just deny the reality and accept the lie.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad that you had the ability, Costa, to not stay in denial, because it's hard for people to come out.
Yeah, it is. I understand it. And I could have easily gone the other way and thought, no, that's Satan talking to me. This is a trick, but I really had got to the end of it.
But you did something that most witnesses won't do, Costa. And you said, Jehovah, I want you.
I want a relationship.
Most people just throw it out. This whole thing, throw it out. A lot of them become atheists. And it's sad because here you got answers. You got to see clearly. God was the same today, yesterday, and today. And but you did have to say, and I had to say too, God help me. I need some help. And wham, the help was there. And I want to say this on this recording because it's going to be on YouTube in front of 5,000 people. And every other thing, Instagram and everything else, I can put it on Facebook, because I want people to know you don't have to be an atheist. You don't have to struggle. You don't have to throw out God. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, go ahead.
Oh, absolutely. And one of the things, another principle I lived by as I was learning all this, as I was coming out, was don't throw any beliefs out until you have good reason to. So whilst I was searching and I was studying and I was looking at all, and look, I had a lot of help. There were quite a few other people at that time that we found each other. We were all starting to exit. It was quite incredible that they never found us. There was a group of us, 15 at one stage. We were meeting on a Saturday at a cafe, and we would just talk and talk and talk, and just get all this out. But and then there was a great chat room called xjw.com, I think it was, and we discussed a lot of doctrine. And I spent over a year just discussing doctrine. So the point I was making, don't throw something out until you have good reason to. And so by doing that, it wasn't just throwing it all out at once, and all of a sudden I'm like a ship without a rudder. So I had sometimes I would replace a teaching with a different one, which was halfway to where I finally rested, and it's still that way. I'm still learning. I'm still I'm still getting to know God better, and yeah. So I just turned the heater on. Is that bothering? Is that causing a
No,
sound
Nope, we
problem?
can't
don't
hear
hear it.
nothing.
We don't
Yeah,
hear it.
you know,
So
it's sunny Australia, but it was 35 degrees last night. So
Ooh,
so
wow.
just a bit cool.
I'll say.
So did you say
Spring-
goodbye to
spring
these
zone.
guys? Did you say goodbye to them, Costa, or did they disfellowship you, or did you say goodbye, or how did it all go down?
I was I was lucky or blessed or whatever you want to put it. I ended up moving interstate. I moved up to Queensland, to Brisbane, and not many people knew me there. And I basically just faded,
Faded.
and by fading, I got to the point where well, um, one morning I decided, hey, I'm in a city where not that many people know me because I was well known in Melbourne, where I grew up. Maybe I can go to a church here and not get caught, and I can go see what they're doing. And so one Saturday morning, I took a drive around the area and I noted down all the different times the churches started their services, and I chose one, and I ended up going to a different one actually. as I was going on the way to the one I'd chosen, I saw one out of the corner of my eye, and I was driving down the road, and it was almost like I took the corner at 40, what would that be, about 25 miles an hour. But it was quite smooth. I didn't screech my tires or anything. So, and I parked, and that was the place for me. They took me in, and under their wing, there were a couple of hundred people at that church, and they were so kind, and they taught me. It was just the best thing that could have happened. So
It's weird.
so anyway,
automatically
after a
turned.
time,
No, seriously.
yeah. So I was there for about a year, and I wrote a letter of resignation. I explained to them what the heresies of the Jehovah's Witnesses were, and why I wanted to leave. And that was hard for my mother to take, but to her credit, she didn't completely cut me off, and we still have a relationship, which is really good. I'm blessed by that. My sister doesn't speak to me, but my brother, well, he was disfellowshipped, and we've been a help to each other all these years. So.
What happened to your father? I forgot what you said.
My father became a witness when I was 13, and then he died about this time too.
Oh.
So he died a bit early. Yeah. It was a very stressful time in my life. Not only did my father die, but I moved to another state, and I was leaving a cult. So,
Man.
but at the same time, it was also a wonderful time because it was all new. The freedom that God gives was just wonderful, and so it was exciting because I didn't know where it was going to lead, and I finally, when I read the Bible, I really felt that these were God's words. When I prayed, I really felt I was praying to my Maker, and so this longing for this relationship I've always had was finally fulfilled. So even though it was extremely stressful time in my life, it was also beautiful in that way. And yeah, so anyway, shortly after that, I met a woman who was in a Pentecostal church, and I started going along to this Pentecostal church on their evening services, and still going to the other church that I started with. We ended up getting married, and I went to Bible college as well.
Wow.
And I felt Bible college, I called it my deprogramming phase. Yeah, just reading through the Bible and studying it book by book. Unexpectedly, a scripture would pop up that the Jehovah's Witnesses use all the time to make a point. And it was like, oh, that's the context of that scripture. And it was like it would sneak up on me. So we'd be going through Timothy, First and Second Timothy, and then all of a sudden that scripture would pop up, and seeing it in context, I just realized how they misuse it, in the witnesses, and how they really beat you over the head with it. So yeah, I called it my deprogramming phase, and so I did a diploma of theology, and that helped a lot. And yeah, I'm not sure if I'll ever use it yet. I haven't really been a minister in that way, but it certainly has helped me understand my God anyway.
Did you have any fear when you left, like that when you walked into that first church? Did you think your hand was going to burn off or anything?
No, by that stage, even though it'd only been a few months, I was so sure that the Jehovah's Witnesses were a cult. I still woke up some mornings and thought, is this real? Did this really happen? Was the truth a lie? Was it, how? Because before that I was a full on, mentally speaking, I was a full on card carrying member. I had the blood card, no blood card in my wallet. I was a card carrying member, as the expression goes. Fully sold out. Yeah, but always feeling that there was something not 100% with this.
Wow. And you felt it kind of sidetracked you from being
Yeah.
the one that you wanted to be.
So I got a question for you. Did you get back? You did not get baptized as a Jehovah's Witness?
Yeah, you did.
Oh,
I did. Yeah.
Oh, you
Yeah,
did?
and I was a pioneer. Yeah,
Oh,
I
you
got
know,
baptized
because I know
at
you said
16.
so when did that happen that you got baptized then?
I was 16.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. I thought you dedicated your life. I didn't realize what that meant.
No, I did. I dedicated my life at 13, but I got baptized
Okay.
at 16.
Oh, now there we go. Baptized at 16. Okay.
And the reason that was because for the 3 years in between, I struggled with whether this was really the truth or not.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I probably would have got baptized at 13. But there was a few years there where I had strong doubts.
What books were you studying when you went in? The Paradise Book of Revelation, or what were you studying?
The red one, the Paradise Book. Yeah.
Paradise.
Yeah, that was one. Yeah, the Revelation book came out about that time.
How did you feel switching from the New World Translation Bible to something different?
Well, I knew it quite well, so that's a good thing. I think being well, we know the problems with it, obviously, but being on the more literal side of of the translation spectrum. So I ended up, one of my first steps was to get a Bible that was easy to read. And I bought a New Living Translation.
That's a good one.
On recommendation. And it was great. Like, you could just sit there and read it for pages and pages, unlike a New World Translation. It's so clunky. That's the word I use. It's clunky. It's like, like the gears in a truck, an old truck that just don't synchronize, and it's awful, the New World Translation. So getting the New Living was an eye-opener, and yeah, and it was one of those red letter editions. And I remember the night I finally accepted that Jesus was God. I remember I started crying, I started bawling when I realized, because I had often thought to myself, look, it's easy for you, Jehovah, you sit up on your throne, but I'm the one who's suffering down here,
Yeah.
Yeah. And when I realized, no, he took on our suffering and so on, and he himself came. And, I understand all the theology behind it, but now it really touched my heart. And I remember I was crying, and I remember picking up my Bible and reading the red words, the red letter, thinking, they're God's words. That's what he would say to me. That's him actually saying it to me. And wow, it blew me away that night. And again, relationship. My relationship suddenly became a lot closer. There was me and there was God. And suddenly when I realized that Jesus was God, it was all of a sudden,
it bridged it together for you.
It was even closer.
So
Wow.
I have a question for you. So like, if you're speaking, well, there's going to be people listening to this whole thing who are thinking about leaving, and they long for that relationship with their father God, and they long and they hope that this God, Jehovah, is not really mean like they've been told, because we all need that father figure. And then you have Jesus, and you talked about how that he really took our suffering. So when you were going through all that hard time, how could you describe to somebody what it feels like to realize and allow God to take your suffering? And how does that work for you? How do you live that? And how did you live it?
Okay. So the fact that he cared enough to do it himself rather than send his son, as the Jehovah's Witnesses keep teaching us, that was just enormous. That it was such a paradigm shift, from this God who sits on his throne to a God who actually gets involved hands-on with his people. So that helped a lot. As far as since then, it's always been a struggle for me to suffering. So this is actually one of the direction I wanted to go with my story today. I've always had a highly developed sense of justice, a highly developed sense of right and wrong. I know children often go through this phase when they're about 7 or 8 years old, where everything's black and white and that's right and that's wrong. Maybe I haven't grown out of that or something. I don't know. But I've always struggled with suffering. In why do people suffer? And it doesn't have to be my suffering. It can be that of others. It just really affects me that people are suffering. And so I've spent the last 25 years searching for the answer. And only recently have I come to a place where I feel that I feel comfortable. So even myself, my marriage has just broken up. I've been separated for 2 years, but 4 months ago we finally split up, and there's a lot of suffering going on. We have a couple of teenage children. They're coping reasonably well considering, but of course it's hurt all of us. And I've heard for years people say, "Oh, give it to God, give your suffering to God or give your problems to God." I've never understood what that meant. I've always struggled with that. In the last 4 months, I've really got it. I've been able to go through the grieving process of the breakup of my marriage and everything that we wanted to achieve and everything that means with God. I've cried when I've had to cry. When I felt that I need to cry, I've been able to just cry and talk to him while I'm crying. And I have got incredible relief. I mean, the build up to the point where I just start to cry. Normally I don't cry. I've never really been one who cried easily, So this has been quite a lot for me the last, 3 months. Of course, the build up to that point when you're about to let go of those tears is awful. It's very painful. But within 3 to 5 minutes of crying and calling out to God and saying, "This is not fair," there's a peace that comes. And I think the crying mechanism is what he's given us to cope with these things. And I can't explain it why, but I just feel an absolute peace when after I've had my little time with him. And for the first 2 months, that was almost every day. And then it sort of started going to a couple of times a week. And lately, I'm not crying at all. And I've gotten over the unfairness of it, of my situation, because I do believe, I did everything I can. I've been a good boy. I've done why has this happened to me? And in the end, it doesn't matter. I have that relationship with my Creator, and he can take it. I don't know how he does it, but he takes it off you. So that's where I'm at the moment.
That's good for people to know.
Yeah.
Because like I said, so many of them come out of there and they don't want anything to do with God. And I always say this to a lot of witnesses. I said, it doesn't matter. Call him God, call him Jesus, whatever. If God's Jesus, then why can't you say God? You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like everybody gets hung up on that. But it's like I tell people, if you bow your head and you say, "God, help me," or like you did, you said, "Jehovah, help me," and you got help.
Or you said
And
Jesus
so
helped me.
I
Get
don't,
help.
I try not to, to scare people off when I'm talking to them. It isn't like I'm ashamed of my faith or anything, but I'll use the word God. I'll use the word God a lot because I don't want to lose them, because God is God. God is, has no beginning, no end. I mean, God is God. And I think I don't know that he's partial. When you bow your head in all sincerity and you say, God, I'm lost, or Jehovah, I'm lost, or whatever, God answers. You know what I mean?
I agree.
I
Because
do.
so many witnesses. I know when I started going to different churches, I started visiting a lot of churches, and I was like, oh my God, they're worshiping the mediator. Oh my God, you remember how we were taught that in the witnesses?
Yes.
Oh my
yes.
God, and I'd run out the door. I was one that thought my hand was going to burn off when I touched the door. I really did. I went like that. I reached, and then all of a sudden I closed my eyes, and because it was the place, it was the place where the demons were. You remember the lurking places,
Yeah,
every unclean thing, and
It was. That's right. Yeah. and the pictures of all the churches at Armageddon being, struck by lightning or swallowed by earthquakes, and
Babylon
yeah,
the Great, the world empire, false religion. I was
yes.
going in, and I was like you. This one church I went into, they had cameras, and and I'm like, oh my God, like I was sitting in the bed, and there's a camera coming over the top, and I was like, oh. And at the end, they asked people to stand up, and I stood up, and I was
Yep.
like, it just felt like you said so good. I was like, oh my God, I'm home. I was really home.
Yes, that's home. Yeah. In fact, for me, that's my. I've been going to church for a year with a mainstream. Like I think you have the United Methodist Church there.
You do.
This is the
Yeah.
Australian version of it. And then I started going to this Pentecostal church, and that's what you were just explaining with the door handle. That was my reaction to that one. I had read about it. So my advice to anyone, read about it, study it, don't just look at the Jehovah's Witness publications, look at everything. And then you can always make a decision that you've looked at it, you've examined it, you've come back. Or you've looked at it and examined it and found it to be wrong. And really, how can God condemn you for wanting to find the truth? Wanting to know the truth about him and wanting a closer relationship to him. I can't see how God can possibly condemn you for that. And he'll bring you home. If the Watchtower Society is home, then he'll bring you home. If that's where you want to go, he'll bring you back. He's not going to just say, oh no, you've rejected the faithful slave, you're forever condemned. I mean, who would do that to their son or to their daughter? Any parent would understand that.
Even Jesus, say we're searching and we're going from church to church, and this one there's dancing on the chairs, and people are being slain in the spirit. Then this one's totally hardcore fundamentalist, hell and and then this one. I tell people just visit as many as you can, just go until you find something that resonates with you,
That was my plan, to spend 2 weeks at every denomination that I could comfortably drive to, and just compare them, just have a look, because I'd never been to another church. Here I am, an Italian Catholic. Until I was 3 years old, I'd never been to a Catholic church other than to get baptized, and I can't remember that happening. So,
did you ever think you wanted to go back to that? To the Catholic?
Oh no.
He never actually went there. He was baptized as a Catholic, but he was too young to remember. He just said,
God,
so he didn't really ever. But you know what? Because your mom was raised in it, it would have spilled out into your life in a lot of different ways.
Well, the Jehovah's Witnesses do a great job of demonizing the Catholic Church.
Yes, they do.
And the funny thing is, in the end, everything they've ever criticized the Catholic Church for doing, they actually do themselves in some way. Even the pedophilia. Do you remember watching the world at the end of the year wake? Was like a roundup of world newspaper articles, and there was always something about blood and always something about the Catholic Church and their pedophilia problems.
They hated the Catholic Church. They were the worst. They had all the priests.
And now they're in it. They're doing the same thing.
Yes, I mean, so we've been hearing that they're like a one with the Catholic Church. That's what we've been hearing lately.
Even more guilty because they've hit it. The Catholic Church, there's been a lot of movies where they've been exposed. They've apologized. They said, we have this problem. Not that they fixed it all, but we've seen a lot of movies on it. You know, the witnesses won't come clean. They'll lose all their privileges, all their what do they call those things where they get the free, the 501c3. They'll give up all that before they admit they're guilty.
Yeah. So I'll move on to where I am now.
Yeah.
I did apologetics as part of my my diploma of theology, and that was a great subject. How to defend the faith, and you know, Jehovah's Witnesses are great apologists for their doctrine, but they're terrible Bible students. They can defend their doctrine, but they really can't. They really don't understand their Bible well at all. So
what's an
apologist? I came to realize that during my Bible college experience.
What's an apologist? What does that mean?
Apologetic.
Defending the faith. Yeah, not apologizing, but defending the faith. So, you know, the creation book, for example, would be an apologetic book on creation. You know? So yeah, that sort of thing. So as part of that we studied a bit of philosophy, and we looked at where did God come from. And you know, I was struck by, I think it was I think they call it the Aristotelian, whatever it is, philosophy. Well, you had to have a first cause. So you can't go back in time infinitely, because if you do, you'll never get to where you are now. We never would have got here if time goes back infinitely. So time had to have a start. And by the same token, you can't have, oh, well, this God came from that God, and that God came from the previous God, and the previous God came from the previous, because then you would just have a long line of succession that, because it goes back infinitely, it would never get to where we are now. So in the end, you have to have a first cause. And that's how I've seen God as the creator God as the first cause. So looking at that, I've come to realize that, well, like it says in Exodus when he was speaking to Moses, I am, you know, I am that I am. God simply is, and he always has been and always will be, which is, you know, you said that yourself just a few minutes ago. The uncreated one is the other thing. So what I've come to realize is that God himself does not know, or does not know the reason he exists. He can't know that, because he never created himself. He just existed and has always existed. And that to me blows my mind, because I think there's almost an absurdism to this. Like, so we have a consciousness, this personality, this God mind or thing that has always existed. It doesn't make any sense to me. I always think that why is there something when, in more logically to me, there should be nothing. And I look at it and I get to the point where you think, this is just absurd, that there's something that even exists is just absurd. Where did this come from? So, okay, I have to accept that God exists and has always existed. And whether that be the God that of the Bible, or the God of, whether it be the singularity, you know, if you believe in the Big Bang, which I believe in aspects of it, you know, the singularity therefore is the first cause, or whatever made the singularity expand is the first cause. That's God. If you believe that the planets and the universe has always been here and will always be here, we just go in a cycle, well, that is the first cause. So that's God. You know, the physical universe is your God, and so on. But going back to the kind of God that I've always wanted this relationship with, I realized not even he knows why he exists or how he came into existence. And that blew me away, because especially as, you know, growing up Jehovah's Witness and with the mainstream church, it's always the all-knowing God. And to come to the realization that there's something God doesn't know, that he had no control over, you could say, is just incredible paradigm shift, you know. But at the same time, I got to thank Facebook for this because there was a meme. A meme came up on Facebook, and I've seen the meme twice now. One, and I've seen this before. One's attributed to an old Indian saying, from North American Indian, and they'll have the face of an old chief, and one is and the same saying is attributed to a Buddhist monk, in a different meme. But the meme said, life has no meaning except what you give it. And that was also quite transforming when I realized I've been looking for the meaning of life. I've been looking for, why am I here? Why am I alive? And all I have to do is accept that life is, because it's evidently it is. And I mean, I could speak for hours about this.
Yeah.
Not just,
we'll
it's not
have
very
to do
simple.
another show on it.
I'm trying to get it into 15 minutes. But life simply is, and that's self-evident to me. But it has no meaning in itself. Inherently, life is just life. Something's either alive or it's dead. Why but you can give life meaning. You have this gift. What are you going to do with it? And I look, what did my God do with this gift? He made others so that he could have relationship with them. And to me, it's not, the question is, what is the meaning of life? It's what gives meaning to life. And the answer is relationship. My relationship with my son, my daughter, my relationship with my brother, my sisters, my neighbors, my relationship with my community, and ultimately my relationship with God. Well, I should probably have started with that. My relationship with my creator is what gives my life meaning. And you take that away from it and it feels empty. And so all my life, I've been looking for meaning, the meaning of life, and it was always there, relationship. At the same time, I was looking for relationship, not realizing that they were one and the same.
It's interesting that you got into relationship before you got into religion. You know what I'm saying? That you cried out to God. I mean, a lot of people never will do that when they leave the witnesses. It's like it's over. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, I don't want anything to do with the Bible. I don't want anything to do with God. I don't want anything to do with all this stuff. I don't believe the Adam and Eve story. I don't believe any of it,
Yeah. And to me, it's just like you want to get, close enough in relationship with this God that we came from, that, we are willing to trust him so completely that we are willing to become lesser so that he and within us can become greater, because within us by the Holy Spirit, right? And it talks about that in the Bible, that we become lesser. That's just because we trust and we know that God knows better than us, and we start letting go, and letting God, and then we literally become the love of God made manifest, if you know what I mean, because we're letting God, right? We're letting God work through us, speak through us, letting it be his words and not ours more and more often. We just trust him that he's going to have the right words for us to say to somebody in the moment. And he just delivers, and then we trust a little bit more, and then we're willing to let him say more through us and be the love more and not hold back, because we're used to holding back a love towards people because we were taught that, or we want to judge, but God's like, don't judge, don't judge this person, you might put in your heart, right? And we just start trusting and becoming more and more and more like him for the asking, I think, too. And that we might have the mind of Christ. We're asking for that we would have God's mind and his lovingness, that it's him, and not that we could boast, because the more we get out of the way and we let God, we can't boast,
Well, the other thing I fully believe is the fall, and that our relationship with God is impaired, and that's why we need to look to him as the example and let him grow in our hearts, like you were saying, because see, my definition of sin is anything, or a sin is anything that you do that breaks relationship or damages your relationship with somebody else or with the world. You can have the sin of greed, and you rape the environment to get to get rich, and that's a sin against the world, against the environment.
Yep.
You can be violent and nasty to your neighbor because you want to vent your feelings, and that's going to damage your relationship with your neighbor. That's the sin, is the damaging of the relationship. If you're violent and nasty to a wall, and you can swear it, it's not a sin, really. I mean, it's not a good idea, but I'm just saying, it's done nothing wrong. It hasn't broken any relationship. So to me, sin is the state of being in a broken relationship. We are in sin. A sin in itself is any act that breaks or damages the relationship with anybody else.
Yeah, because that everybody is a part of God and they're a brother. And Jesus said that if you've done it unto the least of these, you've done it unto me. So whatever we're doing to our brother, if it's loving them or if it's cursing them, we've done it, that we're actually doing it at that moment. We're loving God in that way or hating God in that way, in that moment, because that person is our brother. And he said, that if you've done it unto them, you did it unto me. So we're doing it to Jesus. When we're doing it to God. If we're doing it to our brother, we're doing that to God right that minute. That's hard to understand that. And I like to think of that, I'm starting to get the hang of that when I'm doing something, anything, getting ready for some event or time with people. I'm doing that and getting that ready for God. Because that person, when they show up in my house and we're going to do something together, I'm serving God. And when I'm serving them a cup of coffee, when I'm serving them anything, I'm doing that for God. I'm doing it as if God through me, it's like, but I'm doing it to God.
Yeah.
And that's crazy, but it's true.
You're doing it to bring your relationship closer. and basically that's where I'm at. That's where I've come. After all these years looking for that relationship, I found it, and I've realized that relationships are what give life meaning.
Yeah.
And it's taken me 50 years to put it in those words, but I'm there. and I'm just looking forward to increasing my improving my relationship with everybody and with God, and all the blessings that brings, And as a Jehovah's Witness, that wasn't my focus. My focus was, are they doing the right thing? You go to a house and you talk to someone, and it's all about, are you doing the right thing? Do you believe the right doctrines? And it was nothing about relationship. It was nothing about, yeah.
Well,
and
that's like saying that it's nothing about love, right? Because like you said, that in relationship, if you do anything to harm someone else in that relationship, then that's what you call doing something that you shouldn't be doing. That would be considered sin, because it's not loving your neighbor as yourself. It's not doing it to the least of these, which is you've done it unto me. So you've broken love, really. You've broken relationship, but in so doing and choosing not to hate your brother when you don't like what he did and you're going to cuss him out or something, and you say no, because that would be like, I've done it to the least of these. I just did it to Jesus. I just did it to God, and I'm not going to do that, because they may be having a bad day and they're expressing themselves as if they're out in the desert. They're not getting it right now. They're ignorant, but I've once been ignorant. I'm a lot ignorant still. And so, no, I'm just going to chalk it up to they're having a bad day, and I'm not going there, because I should show compassion, because I'm doing that to Jesus. I'm doing that to God. And so that's relationship. And I like it that you call it relationship, but it could be called love too.
Yes. Yeah. Love. Yeah. God is love.
Yeah.
It's what the Bible tells us. God is love. He wants to have relationship with others, and love. What is love if it's not relationship?
Yeah, and it's God. Love is God, right?
Yeah.
God is love.
God is love. That's Anyway, I said I could speak for hours on each of
We already
these.
out of time already. Are we a few more minutes?
I've got 5 more minutes.
Oh,
but
wow, okay. So Dan, how would you like to have wrap it up?
Well, I just think those are good points, and I think we should do a follow-up, meeting, because there's some things I'd like to share with you too, on perspectives, because where I'm at right now is I don't care what people worship. I don't care if they're Buddhists, Hindus. Because here's why. I feel like depending on where you were brought up is what you're going to be. I mean, if you were over in Israel, what is there, 4 religions over there? You know, if you would be born Muslim, if you were born that, if you were born in Tibet, you'd be Hindu. If you were born in, you know, here in the East, you'd be worshiping Buddha, you know, as Jesus. So I tell people now that I'm not a witness, I can love everybody, because I did a video the other day and I said, the only thing that separates us is our programming. Yeah, you know, and the minute we say, wait a minute, I'm a Jehovah's Witness, I'm a limitation, I'm a whatever. And I've learned, like, I can accept anybody. And here's the other thing. I don't even have an agenda when I meet people. When I meet people, I'm just like, I wonder what, I hate to say it like this, but I'm like, I wonder what their program is. I wonder who they think they are, where they're at now. Because like you said, we can make anything out of ourselves, right? You know,
I'm the same. I'm interested in their story now.
Yeah. You can actually be that because you're the love now. You don't have an agenda. You can actually say, well, who are you? Well, it's nice to meet you. And I can even now, I mean, we've met some people on ships,
Hindus,
that were different religions, the most loving people. They said, oh, our religion embraces everybody. I'm like, okay, cool. Hey, man, you know, and there's some other things I want to run by you when we do another show.
Okay.
It has to
do
with
this is interesting, Dan, because the last few months I've been spending a lot of time looking at other religions, in particular Hinduism and the yogic tradition, not because I believe they have any answer for me, but simply because I'm seeing that they also have, that God has given them a way to connect with Him.
Yes.
I do believe Jesus is the only way in the end, but I believe, I read a book, and I've reread it just recently. It was called, what was it? Eternity in Their Hearts by Don Richardson. And it just goes through how a lot of these tribes that were contacted by missionaries in the early days had something in their belief, in their spirituality, that God put in there so that they would have a contact, they would have a context for Him. And it even talks about I forget his name now. One of the Aztec kings, who he realized, I think it was Aztec or was it Incan? I can't remember now. It's in the book, but he realized that the sun god they were worshiping was not a god at all, because it only took a cloud to go in front of the sun, and you know it lost its power, and so on, and it just never did anything. It just did the same thing every single day. And he called out, and Viracocha, which was the god that they used to worship many generations ago, and only the high priests of his religion knew about this god. Viracocha approached him in a dream and said, "I'm the one you're looking for." and I'm thinking, well, there was no mention of Jesus, but God was contacting this person. Because anyway,
it's great.
I'll send you the link. I'll send you the name. You guys find it.
And
there's hundreds
let's have another discussion on it. It'd be worth doing it. We interview a lot of different people, spiritual people, whatever, and we let them throw out their perspective. You know why? Because there's nothing to hide. When you have a relationship, like you're saying, you're not afraid of nothing. I have my relationship. I have peace. So I'm not afraid of somebody coming in saying, well, share your perspective. We have people that talk to Saint Germain, people that, you know, are
Anita Morjani, Hindu woman, and how God saved her and talked to her when she died, when she went up and met God in heaven and Jesus. Came back, and then Eben Alexander, who was an atheist, brain surgeon out of Harvard, and
near death experience,
and he met God, has a relationship with God now, and you know, I don't know.
That doesn't damage my relationship with my God if I talk to him and we talk about this God.
My heart's well.
If anything, it expands it,
and
I'm expanding theirs.
But see, you got the right mind. Christ's mind was like that. That's the mind of Christ.
Right.
that
Yeah,
you can
Christ.
actually love your neighbors yourself, but most Christians want them dead. Most Christians are like, I wish they were dead, and I'll be glad when they're gone, so we can get to
And
paradise.
we are not going
And
to
I
heaven.
say, how is that any different than the witnesses? We
There
just
was the Sidonian woman who was Greek. I mean, she may have been, she may have worshipped at the local temple to Zeus, for all we know. Jesus still cured her daughter, and the Samaritan woman was not fully Jewish. They had a kind of a hybrid. He he approached her. He wasn't afraid of any religion.
I love Jesus too, and he said, I didn't come to judge. They're like,
Yeah.
what are you going to do with me? Well, I'm not here to judge you. I'm just going to tell you, turn around and go the
Yeah,
other
I'm
way.
here to show you. I'm here to show you. The rest is up to you.
Yeah.
I'd love to have a relationship with you. Is what is what he was offering. But it's and I'm going to wait as long as I can until you see that this is the way. It's basically what he was saying to us.
Yeah.
I will wait for you as long as I have to. Yeah. Anyway, I do need to
Okay.
get going.
Thank you,
We're going to
Costa.
church
Thank
this
you. We love
morning.
you. Thank you.
We'll
Have a
put it
wonderful
on
day.
YouTube and have a great time at your
Yes.
meeting. Okay.
Is it
Okay.
Sunday for you? Is it already Sunday?
It is Sunday morning,
Oh,
and
okay.
it's an important service this
Yeah.
week. Otherwise, I could always.
No, that's okay. No,
No, you already
Have a
told me.
great day.
Because unlike the Jehovah's Witnesses, you don't have to go every week.
Right.
But I do really want to go, and my
Well,
son
thank you.
Thank
today,
you.
and
Yes,
yeah, he wants to go as well. So
all right. God
okay,
bless.
bless you both.
God bless
you.
you too.
All right.
Bye. Have a
Bye.
good day.
You too.
You. Uh-oh.
And bro.